The reason you are still struggling with chronic anxiety is not because you haven't tried enough supplements. It is not because you haven't tried enough breathing techniques. It is not because you haven't tried enough coping mechanisms. It is because you are trying to fix something that doesn't require fixing. Think of it. The moment you have the chest pains, the moment you have the heart palpitations, you react in panic, you treat it as an emergency, and what your nervous system reads into that is that there is a threat. Therefore, your nervous system remains in a state of high alert. In this particular video, I want to share with you the mindsets that led me to anxiety recovery. When someone first joins my program, I always ask them, what is your attitude towards anxiety? What is your mindset towards anxiety? Because the mindset that you have is one of the key components to anxiety recovery. So in this particular video, I want to share the 5 mindsets that led me to anxiety recovery. If you're new here or you're seeing me for the first time, my name is Melly Albright. Albright is an ex-anxiety sufferer who uses her own experience of suffering and recovery to help others who are still struggling. Whether you're struggling with OCD, depression, panic disorder, social anxiety, health anxiety, agoraphobia, generalized anxiety disorder, you are in the right place. You are sensitized. You are in the right place. If you haven't subscribed yet, I will urge you to subscribe because it helps the channel grow, and also YouTube pushes these videos to other people who may need them. Otherwise, let's get started into this video. The first mindset that led me to anxiety recovery is that I can't control that. One of the illusions of anxiety is that you are in control. You are trying to control everything. You are trying to control your thoughts. You are trying to control your feelings. You are trying to control your future, which is not possible. One of the biggest realizations that I had when I was recovering is that I can't control everything. You trying to control your thoughts, you trying to control your feelings, you trying to control your future, what your nervous system reads into that is that there is a threat. Therefore, your nervous system remains in a state of high alert. If you have followed me for a long time, if you have been listening to these videos, you know there is something that we call the first fear and the second fear. The first fear is something that you don't have control over. It happens because you're struggling with a tired mind. You're having a sensitized nervous system. Something like the thoughts. What if I go crazy? These thoughts just pop up in your head. What if I lose control? You can't control these thoughts. You can't control the dizziness. You can't control the heart palpitations. They are a symptom of anxiety. They happen automatically. What you can control is the second fear. The second fear is your response to the first fear. How you react. Are you panicking? Are you seeking reassurance? Are you worrying? Are you fighting? Are you resisting? These are things that are in your control. You can choose to not worry. You can choose to not fight. You can choose to not resist, but you can't choose to not have the dizziness. You're going to have the dizziness because you're struggling with a tired mind. When I talk about give up control, I don't mean giving up. What I'm saying is that know what is within your control and what you can't control. The moment you give up control, your brain learns that there was nothing threatening and it stops producing anxiety. Peace doesn't come from controlling. It comes from knowing, realizing that there was nothing to control in the first place. So know that you can't control everything. You trying to control is the reason why you are stuck in these muddy waters of anxiety. The second mindset that led me to anxiety recovery is that it is okay to feel bad. One of my biggest struggles when I was in the anxiety cycle was my emotions. And at some point, I even thought I had bipolar because I just couldn't understand why my moods were changing. Even you could wonder what is wrong with this person. 1 minute I'm happy, the next minute I don't even know. I'm like frowning. The next minute I'm sad. The next minute I want to cry. So you could wonder what is wrong with this person. So when I was struggling with anxiety, I just didn't know how to deal with my emotions. And growing up, we were not told how to deal with emotions. When you felt sad, when you felt angry, when you felt irritable, you were told those were bad emotions and you are not supposed to feel that way. So when I was struggling with anxiety, I used to feel sad because a sensitized nervous system produces emotions. You can feel sad, you can feel angry, you can feel irritable, emotions of shame, emotions of guilt. And because in your mind these emotions are always bad, you fight these emotions, you suppress them, you try to make them go away, you try to resist them, which makes you have more of these emotions. The reason why you are still stuck with these emotions is because you're trying to make them go away. The moment you react in panic to those emotions, the moment you try to make them go away, the moment you try to resist them, the brain deems them as important. Therefore, more anxiety, more sensitized nervous system, more of these emotions that you're trying to run away from. It's a cycle that you yourself, you are creating. You're making the loop continue. The moment I gave up on trying to make those emotions go away. The moment I continue with my day, I did my thing with those emotions there, they started to lift. There are no bad or good emotions. We are the ones who give them labels. The moment you just do your thing with those emotions there without fighting, you realize that these emotions start to dissipate. And when I say living with them, I don't mean that they are pleasant. Those emotions are not fun. They are unpleasant, they are uncomfortable, but for you to be comfortable, you have to learn to live with these uncomfortable emotions. Emotions brought by anxiety suck. They are not fun. And what magnifies them is when you add frustration to a thought. When you add frustration to a symptom. With anxiety, sometimes you might experience setbacks where you thought that, I was done with these headaches, I was done with this particular symptom, and then boom, you experience a setback and this symptom comes up. When you add frustration to that symptom, when you add frustration to that thought, more of these emotions, you're going to experience the emotions that you consider bad. Those emotions are bound to occur because I have mentioned earlier that a sensitized nervous system produces emotions. It produces emotions of sadness, emotions of anger, irritable, shame, guilt. The only way out of those emotions is through. You feel bad, you're still going to your job. You feel, angry, you're still taking care of your babies. Do your thing with those emotions there. That's how I was able to get over those emotions. The third mindset that led me to anxiety recovery is that thoughts don't make it real. Thoughts brought by anxiety should be taken with a pinch of salt. They are almost never right. When you're struggling with anxiety, your brain will come up with all bizarre kind of thoughts. What if I go crazy from this? What if I lose control? What if I die from this? What if, I lose my mind for this? What if it's a heart attack? A brain that is anxious, an anxious brain is always scanning for danger, and it will come up with the worst case scenario. The problem comes when you try to solve these thoughts, when you try to fight these thoughts, when you try to make them right, when you try to argue with them. There's knowing that you can't wrestle with thoughts brought by a tired mind. You can't win against those thoughts. It's just not possible. You'll end up tired. You'll end up adding pressure to your already sensitized nerves, and that means you getting more sensitized. Thoughts brought by anxiety, let them play in the background. Let them make noise in the background. Don't give them your attention, because the moment you give these thoughts attention, your brain sees these thoughts are important, because those are the thoughts that you're engaging. Those are the thoughts that you're giving your attention, and therefore you will have more of these thoughts. Listen to this. Thoughts brought by anxiety will be scary. They will feel real. This is because they accompany themselves with some sort of emotional charge. If you have a thought, it comes with emotions. And when you have a thought and it comes with emotions, we are bound to take action. And that is where you need to stop this cycle. When a thought comes, when you experience that, when your brain comes up with the what if catastrophic thought, what if I go crazy from this? And this thought comes with an emotional charge. And when you don't understand what is happening, you're gonna take action. You're gonna start to panic. You're gonna start to, resist this thought, fight it, try to argue with it, try to make it right. And this is what keeps those thoughts coming. The key there is to allow those thoughts to be there without engaging them. Watch them like the clouds in the sky. The fourth mindset that led me to anxiety recovery is realizing that I can't change the past. The past is already behind you. You can't change. I was ruminating about the past. I was grieving my lost time with anxiety. I was wishing that maybe if I could have sought help earlier, I wouldn't have struggled with anxiety for 6 years, because it took me time for me to be able to share that, I was struggling. Rumination, wishful thinking, grieving the time lost won't help with anything. In fact, it only adds pressure to your already sensitized nerves. Ruminating about how anxiety started especially happens to people who, all of a sudden they started experiencing anxiety. They started experiencing anxiety out of nowhere. It is not out of nowhere, it is stress build up from the past. And let me tell you something, even if you knew what got you into that cycle, it still won't change anything. Okay, it might bring some closure, but still you will have to do the work. Don't think that if you find out the exact reason why you got into the cycle, it will bring relief, or it will, you will not experience anxiety. You will experience anxiety. Right now, what you need to focus on is how to get out of the anxiety cycle, is how to desensitize your nervous system. That energy that you are using to, ruminate about the past, the wishful thinking, the grieving, the time lost with anxiety, put it in the work. Channel that energy in overcoming anxiety. Stop digging the childhood traumas. I don't know the traumas. This is one of the reasons why I disliked going to the therapist, because personally for me, the moment I got out of the therapist door, I felt worse than I entered, because they put me in, how was your childhood? Did you have some trauma, some childhood trauma? I grew up in a fair home, in a good home. So my childhood was not the cause of my anxiety. I knew exactly what got me into the anxiety cycle. So if you're someone who still has these behaviors of ruminating about, how you got into the cycle, you wish you could, you wish, the wishful thinking, grieving the time lost, that won't lead you anywhere. Focus that energy in overcoming anxiety. The fifth and the last mindset that led me to anxiety recovery is that I'll do my best and be okay with that. There is no perfect in recovery. There is nothing like perfect. One of the things as anxiety sufferers is that you are obsessed about wanting to be perfect. You don't want to practice acceptance wrong. You don't want to do mistakes in your recovery because you believe they will derail your recovery. We are humans and we are not perfect. How can you be perfect in recovery when you yourself as a human, you are not perfect? Sometimes for me, recovery was just like resting, because sometimes those symptoms were so exhausting. If you try to be perfect, you are adding pressure to your already sensitized nerves. Sometimes recovery for me was just showing up and resting and accepting the outcome. Resting is also part of recovery. You don't have to push, even if sometimes it feels overwhelming. I don't mean sit in bed and do nothing. I mean sometimes it just means showing up, feeling the fear, and accepting the outcome. You don't have to be perfect. Trying to be perfect in recovery adds pressure to your already sensitized nerves. Don't try to be perfect in your recovery. Sometimes recovery is just about resting. Sometimes it's just about showing up, feeling the fear, and accepting the outcome. You don't have to push all the time. If you have watched up to this point, kindly a thumbs up for this video, like this video, share this video to other people who may need it, and also subscribe because it helps the channel grow. If you are someone who is feeling stuck, if you are someone who is at the nearly recovered stage, if you are someone who is still struggling with these symptoms, you're still green, the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions, the weird sensation, and you have no idea of what is going on, I wrote a detailed ebook on how anxiety works, what is anxiety, how it works, how it brings about these symptoms, exactly how I recovered from anxiety, ways of recovering from anxiety, and every advice that I can give in one place. If that's something that you feel like you might want to look into, I'm gonna place the link to that ebook down in the comment section. I'm gonna pin that comment. You can grab that ebook using that link. Otherwise, let's meet on the next one.